In our modern society, technology has made it pretty impossible to disconnect and go off the grid entirely. With nearly every single business, stoplight, and so many homes having cameras, it really seems unlikely for anyone to just simply vanish without a trace. However, that's exactly what happened to 16-year-old Karlie Gusé, and that's when she went missing from her home in a remote desert town in California. After her stepmom woke up to find Karlie not in her bed and their front door cracked open, she assumed that maybe Karlie had stepped outside for, some fresh air. However, she got a little worried when she didn't see Karlie anywhere outside, and she became almost frantic when she realized that her cell phone, wallet, and even her glasses, which she needed to wear in order to see, were all still at home. Now, initially, the police might have assumed that this was a typical runaway case, or that Karlie was out with some friends and would maybe be home soon. However, as more detail emerged about the events of that previous night, it became evident that this was anything but a routine disappearance. This terrifying, but yet intriguing story is one that will undoubtedly stay with you and have everybody wondering what really happened to Karlie Gusé. Hey guys, I'm Elise. This is 10 to Life. Let's jump right in. Chalfont Valley has a population of around 650 people, and it's located in Mono County, California, which is a very small community in the Owens Valley region, which is situated at the base of the Sierra Nevada mountain range. It's about 30 to 45 minutes away from several of the most renowned natural tourist destinations like Death Valley National Park, Mammoth Lakes, and the ancient Bristolstone Pine Forest, which is home to some of the oldest trees in the entire world. Chalfont is extremely remote, with the closest city of Bishop being around 15 miles and a 20-minute drive away. So as you can imagine, for teenagers in Chalfont, there isn't much to do unless you play some sort of sport at Bishop Union High School, or if you have a job maybe in the city. Now, as we often hear about, it's easy for teenagers to get in trouble for experimenting with drugs and alcohol simply out of boredom when they're living in a small town like this. And that was the case for Karlie Gusé, who in 2018 had actually been suspended from school for using marijuana on campus. However, besides that, Karlie was said to be a pretty good girl, a trustworthy kid who was just going through a little bit of a rocky period during her junior year. However, this seemingly innocent experimentation would ultimately damage more of Karlie's life than just her one semester at school. Now, to understand what led to Karlie being in this situation, we do need to go back to the beginning and really paint the entire picture of what's going on here. So in March of 1998, married couple Lindsay Fairley and Zachary Gusé had their very first child, a boy that they named Kane Gusé. 4 years later, they had a second child, a daughter that they named Karlie Lane Gusé. Karlie was born on May 13th, 2002. The family lived in Bishop, California, but unfortunately, the Gusés were a far from perfect, happy family. According to Lindsay, Zach would often drink after work, and his personality would turn angry and aggressive. He would allegedly break things in their home, and once even put his head through the drywall of their bathroom. Lindsay said that at some points in their relationship, her and Zach's arguments also turned physical. Now, even though this is Lindsay's account, she admitted to sometimes also being the aggressor as well, including physically. They both realized that their marriage was becoming pretty toxic, and for their children and for their own personal well-being, they needed to get a divorce. Now, Karlie was still only a toddler at the time, but her and Kane, who was now old enough to understand a little bit of what was going on, were said to have adjusted to their parents' separation pretty well, relatively speaking. It was probably more peaceful, and even though Lindsay was granted full custody of their children, they still saw their dad as they all continued to live in Bishop. In 2006, Zach met a woman named Melissa Phillips, and the two of them started dating, and within 3 years, Melissa and Zach had 2 sons together, Cole and Cody. Just a few months after Cody was born, the couple got married, and this was in 2009. Both Kane and Karlie were said to really love Melissa, and they were excited to also have 2 baby brothers. So it seemed like there was going to be a great, happy, blended family, because their mom, Lindsay, also went on to have another son named Branson as well. So when Karlie was around 5 years old, her mother, Lindsay, ended up moving to Ridgecrest, California, which was a little over a 2-hour drive away from Bishop. It was decided that Kane and Karlie would live with Zach and Melissa, and ultimately they would become the primary parents. Now, Karlie's mother, Lindsay, has said that during this time she did a lot of moving around and, in her words, was promiscuous, and she only saw the kids sporadically. However, when she was able to see them, it seemed like she became the fun parent who would take Kane and Karlie to things like drag races and even destruction derbies, while Karlie's father, Zach, and his new wife, Melissa, were doing the day-to-day parenting. So as a blended family, Zach, Melissa, and the 4 kids would do all sorts of outdoor activities together, like camping, dirt biking, hunting, shooting guns, and they would, of course, go on vacations together. They seemed like a really close-knit unit, and Karlie was a typical happy girl. She loved nature, drawing, swimming. She loved animals and dogs. And even though Karlie was a cheerleader, she was also a bit of a tomboy, and she loved doing all of these outdoorsy things with her older brother Kane, who was just like her best friend in the world. Going into Kane's teenage years, with him being older than all of the other kids, there started to be a little bit of a tension in the household due to some of his behaviors. You see, like a lot of teenagers, he began experimenting with marijuana, and he actually became pretty heavily into this kind of pothead lifestyle at around 16 years old. His mother, Lindsay, would later say that there were times where Kane would actually call her and allege that he and his dad, Zach, had gotten into physical altercations during some arguments that they had had. Now, at the time, Zach may not have known what to do to get control of his son and keep him out of trouble, and at one point, Kane had even considered emancipating himself. So having this kind of tumultuous relationship and having 3 other young, impressionable children in the house, I can imagine that it was probably pretty stressful for everyone. However, never an excuse for physical altercations. However, after Kane graduated high school and grew up a little bit, things started to smooth out between him and his parents. Even after he moved out, though, he and Karlie remained extremely close. In 2018, Karlie's mom, Lindsay, moved about 2.5 hours away to Yerington, Nevada. Now, at that point, Karlie was starting her junior year at Bishop Union High School. And since she had already been living with her dad and Melissa anyway, she stayed in California with them. That summer, her dad, Zach, and Melissa moved the family to this very small and remote community called Chalfant Valley. Like I mentioned, Chalfant Valley is very, very small, and it is also what is referred to as an unincorporated community, which means it doesn't have its own local government like a city or a town usually does. This means that services such as law enforcement, public works, and local government offices are provided by the county, rather than by a separate local government specifically for Chalfant. And you can see from these pictures just how remote the community actually is. It's literally surrounded by nothing but mountains, desert, and a little bit of farmland. There's only one business in the entire valley besides construction and contracting companies, and this business is called Flo's Diner, and it's basically what it sounds like. It's a 50s-style gas station, diner, and convenience store, and it actually looks really cool, and apparently people travel from far away for their food, for their antique car shows, and apparently some live music that they have. However, if anyone in Chalfant wants to go somewhere other than Flo's Diner or wants a better deal on gas, they actually will have to go at least 10 miles to find anything else. It's very, very remote. So the family's new home in Chalfant was located in a subdivision called White Mountain Estates, which has been described as a new development with really upscale manufactured homes. Most of the children in Chalfant, especially the teenagers, chose to go to school in Bishop, which is where Karlie would continue to go to high school. Now, at school, Karlie was said to be very popular and also very well liked. She apparently had this very witty sense of humor that just drawed people in. She was a little bit quirky and shy at first, but once you really got to know her, she was said to be one of the most loving, positive, and just kind of easygoing people to be around. She made good grades and had several close friends. And right after she turned 16, she started working part-time as well. She got hired at the title company where her stepmother Melissa was an escrow assistant, and she was going to be taking over for another part-time employee who was leaving to go out on maternity leave. Karlie also had a boyfriend of 6 months, and his name was Donald Arrowwood, but their connection actually went much deeper because they had actually known each other since their preschool days. Now, even though they were young and it was young love, they were in high school, everyone who knew them said that you could tell that they truly did love each other. However, her mom, Lindsay, said that at one point their relationship was going through a little bit of a rough patch, so she had suggested that Karlie tell Donald that they should take a break. Lindsay said that Karlie was completely shocked that she would even suggest such a thing, and apparently she got very distraught just thinking about possibly not being with him, even for a temporary break. And I do think that most of us can remember the days of talking on the phone for hours to a crush or a best friend, that initial butterfly feeling you would get, because back in the day when landlines were a thing, we would just pace around our room with the phone cord stretched as far as it possibly could go, talking for hours on end. Then, after cordless phones and cell phones came along, we were no longer confined to one room. And I don't know about you, but I remember wandering all around the yard, taking a walk through the entire neighborhood to have some privacy, have these conversations. Even now, when I'm on the phone, I pace all around. It's just kind of like a rite of passage. And Karlie was said to do the exact same thing when talking on the phone with Donald. But since it was often so windy in the valley, she'd actually go and walk and sit inside the nearby bus stop since it was enclosed. That way she was able to get a little bit of quiet, a little bit of privacy, and have these conversations. Now, Donald and Karlie clearly had a very sweet relationship. They did things together like skateboard, take pictures together in the beautiful scenery with the valley behind them. However, they were still just kids, so they also kind of got into their fair share of trouble as well. Well, I should say, I guess that's if you consider smoking marijuana trouble, since technically it now is legal in California. However, it's not legal in California or anywhere for that matter for minors to smoke. So the first couple months of junior year, Karlie's usual good grades started to slip, which was probably a result of getting high before and after school. Now, this wasn't new territory for her dad, Zach, and Melissa, because remember, they had dealt with the same thing when her brother Kane was in high school. Now, according to Karlie's mom, Lindsay, since Karlie had always been responsible and had always been honest, she really didn't have a curfew, and she didn't have too many restrictions on her. And it hasn't been said, but maybe they figured that if marijuana was all she was doing, rather than drinking or other hard drugs, then maybe it wasn't that big of a deal, considering she had always been pretty responsible. I mean, it probably depends on a parent's outlook and beliefs toward marijuana as an actual drug, and just by the looks of it, Karlie's family seemed somewhat accepting of it. Now, even though Karlie wasn't living with her, Lindsay's Instagram handle is Sativa Diva. So I kind of think it's safe to say that it was probably normalized to some degree by her mom and maybe even the whole family. Who knows? But if you're not familiar with pot or marijuana, I should say, sativa, I believe, I hope I'm saying this right, is like a branch of a certain kind that you can smoke. I think there's sativa and what's the other one? I can't even think of the other ones, but like one's like sleepy, one's relaxing. I don't know because I don't smoke. It personally makes me too paranoid. But anyway, she had this handle as her name on Instagram, so I think anybody could kind of assume that it was somewhat normalized for her family. So Karlie smoking really seems to have only become a big deal when Karlie was reprimanded for using it at school. Even if parents are relaxed about that kind of thing, most of them still don't want their kids' grades slipping or potentially being kicked out of school, obviously. So luckily, instead of being expelled, Karlie was able to attend an alternative school called Palisade Glacier High School. This school focuses on behavior intervention and also gives support to help students get back on track. So before Karlie would be able to return to Bishop Union, she would have to complete 5 weeks at the alternative school and also go to mandatory counseling sessions. By mid-October 2018, Karlie was nearing the end of her suspension, and it did seem like her grades started to improve again. According to Melissa and Donald, she hadn't smoked at all since she had gotten in trouble, and she was doing well in her counseling sessions too. Not only that, but Karlie was extremely excited for the upcoming homecoming dance. It was set to take place on October 27th, but Karlie had gotten her dress weeks in advance, and she could not wait to go with Donald and her friends. On Friday, October 12th, Melissa drove Karlie to school and picked up Donald on the way. After school, Donald took some pictures of Karlie on his Snapchat, admiring the new glasses that she had recently gotten, which helped her see better for class, and just kind of was like, doing the kid thing, taking photos of each other, being excited, public display of affection, all the things. Now, since it's been stated that Karlie did have a car, but since Melissa was driving her to school, I wondered maybe if she had taken her car away as some sort of punishment, or maybe it just wasn't working, because why else wouldn't Karlie be driving herself? But regardless, Karlie had recently been riding the bus home. So since it was Friday, instead of getting on the bus, Karlie called and asked her dad if it would be okay for her to go hang out with some friends and then stay for the varsity football game. Her dad, Zach, told her that was fine, but before deciding what to do before the game, Karlie called her brother Kane, who had gotten his wisdom teeth taken out that day. She asked Kane if she could come and visit, but he told her that it wasn't a good day because he wasn't in the mood after that procedure. He didn't want to have any company. He was in a little bit of pain, discomfort. Now, talking about the football game, at Bishop Union and at most high schools, varsity football games start around 7 p.m. So with school ending at 3:30 p.m., Karlie and Donald had a lot of extra time to kill. So they ended up going over to a friend named James Dublin's house, who happened to live in the same neighborhood as Donald, a neighborhood called Highland Park, which was actually only 2 miles away from the school. So there were about 4 other kids hanging out there, and after about a month of not smoking, Karlie decided that she was going to smoke again. So she hit a bong full of weed that the other kids were using. Now, it's not really clear whether or not Karlie and Donald ever actually planned on going to that football game or not, or if they got sidetracked and decided later on to just stay at their friend's house, but regardless, they never made it to the game. So at this point in the story, there have been some discrepancies about what took place going forward, but we'll go over those a little bit later. Right now, I'm just going to explain what happened as I understand it from dozens of articles, interviews, and posts made by Karlie's loved ones. So that evening, her stepmom Melissa was in town in Bishop as well. She was attending a trunk or treat event with her mom and her 2 youngest boys, Cole and Cody. Since she was already in town, Melissa texted Karlie to ask if she wanted her to pick her up from the game on her way home. But Karlie told her not to worry about it and that she would get a ride home from Donald. Now, the gathering in Highland Park has been referred to as a party, but it was really just 5 or 6 kids hanging out, smoking and talking. So, in other words, if you're like me and you're a millennial and you grew up having these, it was called a kickback. Now, I don't know if people still call it that, but it was like a party was a tried and true party. A kickback was when it was going to be like a couple of friends who just hang out and it's a tighter group. And if you haven't heard that word for a while and that was like a hit of nostalgia for you, I hope you enjoyed it because I still laugh and cringe about what we used to call things back in my day. But anyway, it was just the 6 kids hanging out, smoking, and talking. Well, not long after Karlie hit the bong, Donald and the rest of the group started to notice that she was acting a little bit strange. They recall Karlie becoming scared of the music, crying on and off, and acting paranoid that people were tracking her on her phone. Now, none of the other kids considered that something could have been laced in the marijuana because all of them smoked the exact same substance. They shared the bong, and none of them were acting any differently than usual. So it was clear that for some reason, Karlie thought that she was in danger, and Donald decided to just take her to his house a few blocks away because he didn't really think she was feeling comfortable. It was better to get her out of that situation. So James ended up giving them a ride to Donald Street. But after he drove away, Karlie turned to Donald out of nowhere, and she had a terrified look on her face. He tried to ask her what was wrong, but she just stared at him before finally screaming his name over and over. Donald tried to comfort her, but she was pushing him away. He was finally able to get his arms around her and tightly hug her, hoping that it would calm her down. And while it seemed to for maybe a second, Karlie suddenly bit him, pushed him back, and told him not to come near her. She began dialing her stepmom Melissa's number while telling Donald to stay away from her. And right as Melissa answered the phone, Karlie started running down the street. Donald was obviously completely confused, but he knew that Melissa had answered her call and that she was probably going to come and pick Karlie up. So even though he wanted to go after her, she was clearly afraid and very distraught, and he didn't want to make that situation any worse. So Donald said that he just stood in the middle of the street and watched Karlie run until she disappeared into the darkness. Then he waited there for about 20 more minutes in case she came back. But she didn't. Melissa was pulling into the driveway of their home about 15 to 20 minutes away when she received that call from Karlie. She remembers answering the phone and Karlie sounding frantic and also out of breath. It had only been about 30 minutes since Melissa had asked Karlie if she needed a ride. But remember, she had said no. But now she was saying that she changed her mind, and she was begging Melissa to come and pick her up. Melissa got the boys inside and let Zach know that she had to go and pick up Karlie. Now, Karlie's dad, Zach, had gotten home a few hours earlier, and since it was the end of a long work week, he had decided to have a couple of drinks. He later said that he wasn't sure why Karlie needed to be picked up so quickly if she was just at a football game, but he didn't think too much about it after Melissa left. Okay, go pick her up if she needs a ride. Karlie apparently begged Melissa to stay on the phone with her and to not hang up, and she originally said that she was in the back of the Highland Park neighborhood. So Melissa did her best to stay on the phone with Karlie while she drove. But due to them living literally out in the middle of nowhere, the call dropped. Service went out. Minutes later, when her phone finally regained service, Melissa was able to get Karlie back on the phone. However, instead of being in the Highlands, Karlie now told Melissa that she was running down Dixon, which was a road about a mile away from the neighborhood. She wasn't able to pinpoint exactly where she was on Dixon, but as Melissa drove over a small bridge, she saw a light bobbing up and down in the distance, and it was Karlie running down the road with her phone flashlight on. So Karlie got in the backseat of the car, and according to Melissa, she was acting completely erratic. She was pale as a ghost, and her pupils were just super dilated. Karlie reportedly was hopping from seat to seat, looking out the windows, and Melissa later said it took her nearly 15 minutes to calm her down enough so that they could actually even drive home. When Melissa was able to ask Karlie what was wrong, she told the truth about not going to the football game. She said to Melissa, "I've been with friends. I got high. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Now, Melissa was a little shocked because it's not like it was the first time that Karlie had smoked before. Even though Melissa and Zach had been encouraging Karlie to do better, her apology and her reaction seemed a little bit over the top for just smoking weed. So on the drive home, Karlie allegedly repeated that she was scared, and she was worried that the car or Melissa driving too fast would kill her. Melissa and Karlie got back to the house at around 9 p.m. Melissa briefly explained to Zach what was going on, but he could tell that something else was wrong with his daughter. He said that Karlie was acting paranoid, scared, and standing in the corner as if she were afraid of them. However, just minutes later, she would say things like, "I'm so sorry, I love you guys." It was like her thoughts were completely up and down, going between being afraid and frantic to wanting to express her love for her dad and her stepmom. Now, Zach had seen Karlie high before, but she had never acted like this. So he and Melissa first thought that maybe someone had slipped her something in her drink, or maybe that the weed that she smoked was laced. They noticed that her pupils were still very dilated. So Melissa tried asking Karlie what exactly she was afraid of, but she would just say that she didn't know. Melissa and Zach tried to assure her that she was home and that she was safe, but her roller coaster of emotions and paranoia just continued. Melissa told Karlie that she would probably feel better if she ate something, so she gave her a power bar and then began fixing her a salad. Now, I just want to say I'm not really sure why someone would want to eat a salad when they weren't feeling well or possibly were needing to absorb some sort of substance. I feel like in that moment you would want something carb-loaded or comfort food, but maybe it's something she asked. Who knows? It's also possible that Melissa just figured she needed nutrients or something. I don't know. So while she was chopping the lettuce, Karlie was still acting very bizarre. She was crying off and on, apologizing, and saying all sorts of weird things. So Melissa decided to record what she was saying. She thought that if she showed Karlie what she sounded like and how ridiculous she sounded being on marijuana, then it would actually make her not want to do it again. So she hit record video, but she stuck the phone in her pocket so that it would just capture the audio of what Karlie was saying. Karlie asked if they could just go to bed and if Melissa would come with her into her room because she didn't want to be alone. Melissa agreed, and she brought the salad that she had made and handed it to Karlie on the bed. She reportedly put a bite of the salad into her mouth but then quickly spit it out. Melissa asked her why she wasn't eating the salad, and Karlie said, "It's the devil's lettuce." Now, at that point, Melissa was a little annoyed and just told Karlie to go to bed, but she apparently worriedly said, "No, I don't want to sleep. You're going to kill me." So Melissa said something along the lines of, "Karlie, why would I kill you? That is preposterous." Melissa ended up messaging Donald on Facebook Messenger and asked him what they had all taken, and also said all kids say just pot. And Donald replied, "Melissa, you know it was just marijuana. I was with Karlie, Melissa, all the way up until you picked her up." While still recording, for some reason, Melissa asked Karlie how the football game was, even though she knew she didn't exactly make it there. So Karlie said, "I didn't go. I'm sorry I lied." And also said, "I really messed up tonight." It was like her awareness was kind of coming and going in waves, and she'd be seemingly fine, talking normally one minute, to saying strange comments and acting erratic and paranoid the next minute. Over the next couple of hours, Karlie requested for her and Melissa to paint their toenails, to read the Bible, and disturbingly, she said that she was having demonic thoughts and couldn't help it. Melissa noticed that throughout the night, Karlie seemed to be writing something or doodling on some paper, but she wasn't sure what it was about. Zach and Melissa have said that she was acting afraid of her phone and put it on the counter the entire night, not wanting anything to do with it. However, at about 10:15, Donald, who hadn't heard from Karlie since she left and took off running, got a text from her phone number, and in that text it said, "That shit was laced." Now, some have speculated that it was possibly Melissa who sent that text message, just to see if Donald would reply confirming that it was laced, or say that someone else had gotten sick too. But according to Donald, it was just weed, and he was with her the whole night and smoked the same thing, and nobody else had gotten sick. So as Melissa got ready for bed, Karlie stood by her side as she brushed her teeth and washed her face, and clearly was still afraid to be alone. So they went back out to the living room at some point, and they watched some of the movie Cool Runnings before Karlie's little brothers, who were also there during all of this, went to bed. Soon after, Zach went to bed in he and Melissa's room, and Melissa and Karlie went to go lay in her bed. Melissa said that they talked for a while holding hands, and during another recording, Karlie could be heard asking if she was going to make it through the night. She also asked if Melissa was going to call 911. Melissa said, "No, why would I call 911? And Karlie clarified, "If something happens, will you call 911? To which Melissa replied, "Of course." So Karlie got in bed wearing a cream-colored t-shirt and underwear, and Melissa has said that she watched Karlie trying to sleep, but that her eyelids were shut, but it was like her eyes were still underneath her eyelids moving all around, like she just couldn't rest. So Donald had tried to ask Melissa if Karlie was okay, and at 1:27 a.m., she texted him and said, "Please pray." Now, for some reason, Melissa texted him again at 2:12 a.m., saying only Donald, possibly maybe to ask him a question, but he had since fallen asleep. At some point, Melissa dozed off, but Zach would later say that around 3:30 a.m., he went in to check on them, and Karlie was laying with her eyes completely wide open. Now, it's not clear if he said anything to her or not, but Melissa too stated that once she woke up, Karlie was just laying there with her eyes open. At 5:16 a.m., Melissa got a text from Donald asking if Karlie was okay, to which she replied, "No, not really." Melissa would later say that the last time that she talked to Karlie before falling back asleep was around 5:45 a.m., and then when she woke up again between 7:15 and 7:30 a.m., Karlie was gone. Now again, during this time, there are several discrepancies, which I will talk about later. But according to Melissa, she called Karlie's name and then got up and started looking around the house. That's when she noticed that the front door was cracked open. So she went to tell Zach that Karlie wasn't in her bed. Now remember, Karlie's glasses were still on the nightstand and her cell phone was still on the counter. When Zach and Melissa stepped outside, it was 40 degrees. They saw a single footprint on the ground that to them resembled shoes that Karlie wears, so they knew they needed to go and look for Karlie, so they both got into their separate cars. At some point, Zach also decided to bring binoculars with him because he knew if he stood on higher ground, he could look down over the entire valley to see if Karlie was walking somewhere. On a map, the White Mountain Estates neighborhood looks like a very tiny dot surrounded by endless desert and mountain terrain in all directions. It seemed pretty unlikely for Karlie to have just headed out into the desert, so they decided to go and see if maybe she had possibly gone for a walk. However, typically if Karlie was going to take a walk, she would usually take her dog with her, and definitely her cell phone, both of which were still at home. Zach thought back to a time when Karlie had taken her dog for a walk and ended up calling and asking him to pick her up because she had walked too far. So he honestly thought that either he or Melissa would find her just walking around, and they were even more hopeful after talking to a neighbor who actually claimed to have seen her. When driving through the neighborhood, Melissa saw a neighbor standing outside down the street, so she pulled over to ask if he had seen her daughter walking in the neighborhood. That neighbor, whose name is Richard Eddy, told her that he actually had seen a tall, slender girl with long hair walking down the street. He said he was sitting in his hot tub, which faced the road, and drinking coffee when he saw her around 6:30 a.m. He told Melissa that he believed that this girl was wearing a white t-shirt and gray sweatpants. He later told police that she was also carrying a piece of paper and appeared to be looking up at the stars, which caused Melissa to believe that Karlie was possibly still inebriated at that point, tripping out, seeing things. So Melissa texted Donald to see if Karlie was with him, but he replied, "No, she's supposed to be with you." They contacted her older brother Kane as well, and all of her friends, everybody that they could think of, but nobody had heard from Karlie. And since her phone had a passcode, they couldn't open it to see if she had called or texted anyone. At 8:28 a.m., Melissa texted Donald to say, "I think it was more than weed. She is acting like she is on meth." So this text message led Donald to believe that they had found her because she said that she was acting, not acted. But when he asked if that meant that she was with Karlie, Melissa reportedly got upset. Melissa and Zach drove around for 2 hours, and Melissa reportedly went over desert rocks and small boulders in her Toyota Corolla trying to find Karlie. After 2 hours, they realized that something was seriously wrong and they needed help. So at around 9:30, Zach decided to call Karlie's mother, Lindsay, to let her know what was going on. Now, in a very unfortunate choice of words, when she answered the phone, Zach said, "Lindsay, Karlie's gone." So of course, Lindsay's first thought was, "Gone? What do you mean gone?" And she honestly thought he meant that Karlie was dead. However, Zach briefly explained what was really going on, what the situation was, and Lindsay said that she would be on her way. Soon after this, they called to report Karlie is missing.
Melissa, how old is your daughter?
16.
What's her name?
Karlie.
How long has you been missing?
I last saw her at 5:30 this morning, and then a neighbor saw her walking down the street at 6:30.
Do you know what she was last wearing?
Skinny jeans and sweater.
Do you think she ran away or something?
No.
Now, immediately after calling 911, the Mono County Sheriff's Office sent a deputy out to the Gusé home. From the initial details, it seemed like this was a typical runaway case. That was up until Melissa told the officer about what happened the night before. She and Zach ended up talking to the officer about Karlie using marijuana and also about how she was acting in that audio that Melissa had recorded of her behavior. She also said that the neighbor, Richard Eddy, had claimed to have seen her at 6:30 a.m., so the officer went down to his house to speak with him about what he saw. Richard repeated that he saw this woman in a white t-shirt and gray sweatpants, which is what he had told Melissa earlier that morning as well. So it was a little strange that when she called 911, she told the operator that Karlie was in skinny jeans and a sweater. Now, with no sight of Karlie in the neighborhood or anywhere visible to the naked eye, later that afternoon, a large-scale ground search was initiated. Like I explained earlier, since Chalfont is an unincorporated community, anyone who was available from all of the county's police departments headed out to aid in the search. When Lindsay arrived, she was reportedly so upset and beside herself, so much so that she became physically ill and sick to her stomach, and was having almost a freeze response. Luckily, in a nearby town, a helicopter was set to perform some kind of demonstration, but instead it got rerouted to the Chalfont area to help aid in the search. So everyone was feeling the pressure of time, because not only were there coyotes and mountain lions in the area, but the nights in October were known to get really cold, and Karlie was said to have only been in a t-shirt. When Melissa let Donald know that Karlie was really missing, he and his friends went out on either four-wheelers or dirt bikes to start searching for her, see if they could find her. So the officers took this as a perfect opportunity to question them about what went down at that little get-together, at that party, and to gauge whether or not Karlie could have been slipped something or if the marijuana had been laced. They spoke to the rest of the friends at this party kickback thing and found out that none of them had gotten sick. But they seized the bong that was used so that they could test it for any other type of substances. Police also retrieved doorbell camera footage from Jamie's house, and Karlie appeared to be alert and well enough to walk and talk in that video. Toward the end of that first night, Karlie's friends and family were feeling absolutely desperate. This wasn't like Karlie at all to just run away, and even the police realized that it was definitely a strange case, considering that she took absolutely nothing with her. Donald was able to provide them with her phone password, but there was nothing pertaining to where she could have gone. When the sun went down on October 13th, the police decided to call off the search for the night and to come back the next day. However, a BOLO was issued for Karlie, and this was done rather than an Amber Alert because they didn't know if she had gotten into a vehicle. So word started to travel around the small town of Chalfont, and also this town of Bishop as well. That night, Melissa also decided to post the first of many Facebook Lives, updating her followers about Karlie's disappearance. However, as we've all seen before, anytime the parents of a missing child post a Facebook Live, a video, or even just does an interview, it is always heavily scrutinized by the public.
Is missing still. She's been missing since. Breathe. She's been missing since 6:30 a.m. The last time that I spoke to her was 5:30. She didn't take her cell phone. We're coming up on 10 hours. And now is the part where I'm saying I have to do something because we've had CHP fly over. We've had the Inyo and Mono County sheriffs flying over. Or Bishop PD or CHP flying over. They had their copter day. Thank you to CHP. Love you. And we are going to potentially have the helicopter did the search over a very large area, Chalfont, all the way around us, all the way down to like Laws, and they're amazing. And several Mono County sheriffs, and I see all your faces popping up, and it makes me want to cry. I love you guys. And I'm putting this out there because it's going on 10 hours that she's been missing, and I want to put this on blast because I don't think she's out in the desert. I think that she could have been abducted or taken because we do live by a highway and it happens, and I'm being real.
So many people's first instinct when a child goes missing is to become suspicious of the parents, especially if there is a step-parent involved. We saw a very, very similar situation in the Kyron Horman case, and right away people started reading into Melissa's body language, into her emotions, and really trying to find holes and inconsistencies in her story. And don't get me wrong, there are plenty that we will discuss, but at the same time, the way certain people immediately start picking parents apart before there is any real information is pretty insensitive sometimes. So during this first live, again, even though the neighbor stated he saw Karlie in a white shirt and gray sweatpants, Melissa told people that she was wearing jeans and an unspecified t-shirt.
She is 5'7". Hold on. Let's do this good. Wait, there she is. She's 5'7", about 115 pounds. She has blue eyes and the cutest little nose and a great smile. And her hair goes all the way down past her, like, to her belly, let's say, mid-waist. And this was last year's picture. Shows you she's a little bit different, but not much. She's still, like, adorably cute. She doesn't wear makeup and everything. She left in her jeans and a t-shirt. So
the next day, not only did Mono County and other surrounding law enforcement agencies come out to assist in the search, but the FBI became involved as well, which I just want to say I think it's really amazing when police departments realize quickly that they could benefit from the FBI's assistance rather than waiting to try to do it themselves before asking for help and having that kind of like underlying competition. So the FBI joined in this case pretty much from the jump. The second day of searching, another helicopter and drones and even horses were brought in to search a 10-mile radius around the Gusés' home. Karlie's parents were asked to provide a pair of her shoes and socks, something that the tracker dogs could learn her scent from. So it was then that Melissa realized that a pair of Karlie's white Vans were missing, so she was able to conclude that Karlie must have left wearing them. That same day, a second witness came forward, named Kenneth Dutton. He too lived in the White Mountain Estates, and he said that around 7 to 7:15, he saw Karlie wearing a white t-shirt and gray sweatpants, holding a piece of paper and walking toward Highway 6 just down the road from their neighborhood. The next day, on October 15th, it was released that a woodworker was driving down Highway 6 and also saw a woman with long hair wearing a white shirt and gray sweatpants. This woman was standing near the intersection of the road to Karlie's neighborhood called White Mountain Estate Road and Highway 6. She was standing behind a barbed wire fence. The man said that this was around 7:30 a.m. So the dogs who were tasked with tracking Karlie's scent also alerted to the bus stop enclosure near her house, and that very corner where she was supposedly seen by the woodworker. Now granted, Karlie did spend a lot of time at that bus stop talking on the phone, so that doesn't necessarily mean that she had been there recently or had gotten on a bus or anything like that. However, being spotted and having a scent near Highway 6 caused the investigators a lot of concern. Highway 6 basically serves as Chalfont's connection to the rest of civilization. It not only leads to Bishop, but it is also a part of one of the largest transcontinental highways in the United States, called US 6. US 6 is over 3,200 miles long, and it stretches from California all the way to Massachusetts. It passes through 14 states, connecting various cities and towns along its route. So as you can imagine, trying to find someone passing through multiple jurisdictions would be pretty difficult. Highway 6 being a popular trucking route also caused investigators and Karlie's parents to fear that maybe she had gotten a ride with the wrong person, or was possibly even abducted. Now, most searches for missing teenagers last around 72 hours. But Karlie's disappearance was given a week of exhausting every search and rescue resource and even searching at night using heat sensing technology. When law enforcement called off the official search, they decided to move toward more of an investigative role rather than a boots-on-the-ground search and rescue or recovery type mission. However, volunteers stepped in to continue looking for any small sign that Karlie could have maybe just wandered off.
If Karlie is watching this tonight, what do you want to say to her?
Baby girl, there's nothing that you can't say to me or call out to me. Just, please, Karlie. I missed you. I love you. And just keep praying, baby. You're gonna come home.
On October 22nd, just a little over a week after Karlie went missing, Dateline NBC asked Melissa and Zach if they would participate in an interview to include in a story about the case. According to Melissa, law enforcement had advised them not to do any interviews with the media or to release any information because it was still an active investigation, which to me did sound a little bit weird. But at that point, they hadn't uncovered any major or pertinent information, and it seems like getting Karlie's name and face out there to as many people as possible could have only helped in the search. However, it's been speculated that maybe they just didn't want the whole marijuana situation and whatever was going on with her mental health to be released, because it could have maybe made people think of Karlie as the kind of kid who just smokes weed and would run away. And I guess that's what Melissa thought too, because this interview, along with her Facebook Lives, is another example of the timeline and the details of this case being wishy-washy and even intentionally skewed. During the interview, Melissa and Zach said that on October 12th, Karlie was picked up from hanging out with some friends. She said that they ate dinner together before going to bed, but the only mention of her state of mind was Zach saying she seemed disoriented. They didn't elaborate at all, and it's not a requirement for them to release that type of information about their child, but that wasn't the only strange thing about the interview. Melissa told Dateline that after Karlie went to sleep, she went to sleep in her own room with Zach. She said that she woke up around 5:45 and went to start her morning routine of going to open the kids' doors and telling them good morning, which apparently she normally does to get them ready for school. However, that morning would have been a Saturday morning, and we already know that she didn't sleep in her own bed. She had stated that she slept with Karlie in her room. She then stated that after seeing all of the kids, including Karlie, she went to lay back down and then fell back asleep for a while. Which again, doesn't even make sense, because why would you wake up your kids and then just immediately go lay back down and go to sleep? If you were just checking on them, why say good morning? Why wake them up? In that interview, she said that she woke up a short time later and found that Karlie's bed was empty and that she was gone. Soon after the initial disappearance, and especially when some of these discrepancies started coming out, Karlie's mom, Lindsay, started to feel suspicious about everything that was going on. Even though they only talked when necessary, they all did have a pretty good co-parenting relationship. That was up until Karlie went missing, which is honestly, in my opinion, completely understandable. I know most of us would like to think that in a similar situation, we'd be strong and everyone would unite as a team and work together, but in real life, it doesn't always happen that way. When guilt, resentment, anger, and finger-pointing come into play, especially during a time that is already so emotional and stressful for everyone, it's really not hard to understand how a situation could quickly turn toxic. However, after Lindsay started to wonder and even ask Zach if Melissa could have done something to Karlie, they were not even able to remain on speaking terms. 3 days later, on October 25th, Zach and Melissa and then later Lindsay all spoke to Nancy Grace for her show Crime Stories. Now, as most of us know, Nancy Grace can be a little bit passionate, to put it nicely, which works well in some situations when people are trying to dodge questions or leave out important details. She can be a little bit intense sometimes, but she does have a way of pulling information out of people, whether you like it or not, whether you're indifferent to it. She does have a certain sort of way about her, which I believe is why she has been so successful after so many years. So Melissa and Zach were continuing to be vague on how exactly Karlie was being paranoid and scared, and she really tried to get them to explain how she was acting and what she was specifically doing to cause them to think that.
What was she doing that was acting paranoid to you?
Scared.
I know, but what did you observe about her that seemed she was paranoid?
She just was acting very nervous and scared about, her phone, about us being around her at moments. And then at other moments, she'd change and just say she loves us and ask us if she was okay. And of course, we said, yeah, you're the...
When you said she was acting nervous and afraid to be around you, what was she doing to make you think that?
I don't know. She smoked pot. I don't know what was wrong with her.
I know, but you're telling me that she told you or told your wife she had marijuana. All right.
Yeah.
You're saying she's acting paranoid. What was she doing? Was she pacing the floor? Was she biting her fingernails? Was she twitching? Was she crying? Was she anxious? Was she on her phone? Did she call 911? What was she doing to make you tell me that she was acting paranoid? Because I've never seen my children act paranoid, and I don't know what that even looks like for a child. What was she doing?
She was just standing in the corner, afraid of not being safe.
Did she say that?
Yeah, she felt like she wasn't safe.
Oh, okay, well now I'm hearing something after many questions. She said she was afraid. What was she afraid of?
I really wish I knew.
Another issue was the description of the clothing, because at that point Nancy and anyone else who didn't watch all of Melissa's lives were still under the impression that Karlie was in what Melissa had originally said, which was jeans. There was even a missing persons flyer that had jeans and a blue shirt as the clothing listed that she was last seen in, even though Melissa had been told within an hour after Karlie went missing that she was in sweatpants and a white t-shirt. So Nancy asked Melissa to explain why she said that Karlie was in jeans during her first Facebook Live and also in the 911 call. And she said that Karlie always wore jeans, so she just assumed that that's what she would be wearing. Nancy then asked her if, when she went to bed, if Karlie threw her jeans on the floor or put them in her hamper, making Melissa able to tell if the jeans she had on the night before were gone. But Melissa said that Karlie had so many clothes that there would be no way for her to know.
Okay, let me understand. Because in the Facebook Live, I'm trying to get the description of what she had on the last time you saw her out there. So in the Facebook...
The last time I saw her in our home, she only had a t-shirt and her undergarment.
Okay, then that Facebook Live that she blasted out saying, look for her in the skinny jeans... What are we supposed to do with that?
Yeah.
That's not right.
I was in a panic, and she's not one of to go out of the house in sweatpants or skinny jeans.
Okay, all right. And that T-shirt that she was in bed with, wearing at 5:45, is not in the home. That tells me she's still in the T-shirt.
Yeah, I could not find that in her laundry or anywhere.
Okay, got it. Now, what about her skinny jeans? Are they missing?
You know, I wouldn't even be able to say yes or no because she has so many clothes. She has like 20 pairs of skinny jeans and 50 different shirts. She has a lot of clothes.
Okay. Regarding the skinny jeans, were they black or blue?
The ones that she had worn the night before were light blue.
Light blue. Are those missing, the ones she wore the night before? Are they in the dirty clothes? Where are they? I'm trying to figure out what was she wearing when she disappeared.
I don't know. Because the two confirmed neighbors said that she had a white shirt and gray sweatpants.
Okay, are the gray sweatpants missing?
I don't know.
Okay.
She has so many clothes, I can't even.
Usually, parents are like falling over, trying to give you all the facts that they possibly can. Okay. I felt like I was pulling teeth. I felt like it was a little bit of a confrontation, trying to get facts out of the stepmother and the dad.
Which to me does kind of seem a little bit weird. Like, I know maybe with the 911 call she was just rushing to report her as missing. But with the Facebook Live, she would have had longer to think about it and to look in her room for the jeans that she wore the night before, to have the information from the neighbors. So to me, it just seems like unless she had clothes literally everywhere, all over the floor in her room, then it would have been easy to see if the jeans she had on that night were gone. Even though it sounds like a very small detail, a person's outfit that they were last seen in is actually really important. If someone sees a person walking around in pajama pants, but the parent said they were seen in jeans, then someone who sees that person could automatically assume, oh, that's not them. It's not at all what they described her to be wearing. Or if there was a missing hiker, for example, and they were said to be wearing red shorts, a white shirt, and a black backpack. If someone's spotted down on a mountain or a trail that has blue shorts or blue pants and a pink backpack, they probably wouldn't even think twice that that could be the missing person. It's very critical to get it accurate with what somebody is wearing, at all possible when possible. So little details like this can really affect potential sightings. When Lindsay got on to speak with Nancy, she had a lot to say and a lot of issues with not just Melissa and Zach, but also how law enforcement handled the case from the beginning. See, according to her, when she finally got to the house, the police hadn't even gone inside yet to check if Karlie was even inside, or if there was any disturbance or a sign of a struggle. And she had been missing at that point for over 9 hours. She said that a lot of her friends had been helping her search and had been in and out of that house, which wasn't technically a crime scene, but still should have at least been checked for any clues as to where she might have gone.
One more thing we have to do at this house, and that is clear inside the house to make sure Karlie's not, in fact, inside. I said, you've got to be kidding me. 9 hours after my daughter went missing, and you guys are just now stepping in the house. You've let, I don't know how many people come in and walk in my daughter's room. I said, you guys didn't go in and treat it as a crime scene. I understand that, but you didn't see if there was any form of foul play involved. You didn't see if there was any pulled out hair follicles in her head, like, you know, if there's trauma to the hair. Like, I want answers. Like, nobody's treating this as anything other than a missing person.
Nancy also brought up that Zach had supposedly found some shoe prints that matched Karlie's shoes up in the mountains. But there were also prints down by the road near the intersection that she was spotted at by the woodworker. Lindsay, Nancy, and the other guest on the show all agreed that it seemed almost like someone was putting shoe prints placed as a distraction.
What can you tell me about that? The footprints. That seems very odd.
Yeah, it is extremely odd. To me, it has nothing to do with the case. It sounds like somebody is trying to put something else out there to divert the police to something that could be completely bogus. I happen to believe that it is possible that she never did leave the house in the morning, but who knows? Because if there's no videotape, if there's no security cameras on the exterior of this home or on neighboring homes, to me, if I was an investigator on this case, I would go door to door and say, have you seen this woman, the 16-year-old girl, and really look at video cameras in the town, house to house. Did she ever leave the home she was in? I don't know. There's so many inconsistencies in the story. It's hard to know what to believe. The footprints, though, I don't buy it.
Well, I don't understand how out in the desert you can identify footprints. That's your bailiwick to Joseph Scott Morgan, professor of forensics at Jacksonville State University, death investigator, and author of Blood Beneath My Feet. Joe Scott, I've done a lot of footprint cases, but not from desert sand. By any footprint, you're going to have a shoe tread. Period.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right. It's a specific identifier, and I don't see how this, how this person, the father, who allegedly made the statement, can narrow this down to this little girl's feet. I don't see how that's possible. And how would you know specifically to go to a particular area in order to identify these things? I'm just very curious about this whole thing. Where's law enforcement in all of this? Why isn't this being locked down and they're talking about this thing as a crime scene at this point? Because all of this time is precious. Physical evidence is precious. And right now, it seems like a three-ring circus at this point. Very, very frustrating.
Lindsay later pointed out the fact that there was only one shoe print outside the home, making it seem like someone pressed a shoe onto the ground. So obviously that interview wasn't going to smooth anything over amongst the parents. And Lindsay also made it clear that she didn't think that the witnesses who claimed to have seen Karlie that morning held any weight. Melissa told Nancy that she didn't think that Karlie would ever leave the house in sweatpants, and Donald said that she actually didn't even own any sweatpants. So due to this, Lindsay doesn't believe that the person that the neighbor saw that morning was Karlie. She actually thinks that they saw Melissa when Melissa went out looking for her. She even claimed that morning Melissa was actually wearing a white t-shirt and sweatpants. So this has caused some people to speculate that perhaps Melissa really did sleep in her own room and then got up to check on Karlie at 5:45 a.m. and realized that she wasn't home. Then she could have gone outside to look for her, and the witnesses might have mistaken Melissa for Karlie, especially since none of the witnesses were very close to her, and the woodworker would have been going at least 45 miles per hour when he saw her behind the fence. However, lying about the timeline of events wouldn't really make any sense, unless, like some people suggest, Melissa was outside hoping for people to see her and to assume that she was Karlie, because maybe she had actually done something to her inside the house. Now again, that's just the thought process of some of the people who believe that there is something more nefarious going on here. It's understandable that Lindsay would have questions and even suspicions about the last people who saw her child, but some of the accusations were pretty hurtful, especially if they aren't true. Now, this case gained most of its initial media attention after Karlie's parents appeared on the Dr. Phil show. Now, if you ever watched the episode featuring Kyron Horman's parents, it definitely had a very similar vibe with the bio mom pointing fingers at the stepmom. It caused even more people to start picking apart and hyper-analyzing every statement that anyone involved in this case has ever made, especially Melissa. When Dr. Phil asked Melissa about the Dateline NBC interview with all of those timeline discrepancies, she flat out said that she told a false story. She said that since law enforcement originally told her not to give out any information, she didn't know what to say. She said it just was too early and she shouldn't have done that interview at all. But then 2 days later, she was on Nancy Grace. I think that Dr. Phil could have definitely pushed a little more on that issue, but they did have a lot to cover, and they actually ended up splitting their story into 2 episodes. When Lindsay spoke to Dr. Phil, she talked about how she felt that Melissa choosing to record Karlie when she was clearly going through a really rough time was a little suspicious, and almost felt to her like they were mocking Karlie instead of trying to comfort her. She told Dr. Phil that she didn't believe Karlie ever actually left the house that day, and that she thought that Karlie either overdosed or had an accident. She referenced the fact that both Melissa and Zach both said that they saw Karlie lying with her eyes wide open, and she says that her intuition tells her that Karlie was actually already deceased at that point. So maybe if that happened, Melissa and Zach would have panicked and felt like they could get in trouble for not taking her to the hospital, and that would be the reason for all of the discrepancies. Another one of the main issues discussed on the show had more to do with the content of the recordings, rather than just the morality of the recording and recording Karlie without her consent in that mental state. Lindsay said that she hadn't listened to the entire thing because it was really painful for her to listen to. But in addition to being afraid and clearly going through something, Lindsay said that Karlie asked Melissa to call 911, but she didn't. She said that Karlie could be heard begging for her to call because she felt like she was going to die. And she believes that Melissa and Zach should have gotten her medical attention. It was clear that she wasn't just on marijuana, and both of them acknowledged that, but still decided to not take her to the hospital. So Dr. Phil questioned Melissa and Zach because they had decided not to release the audio of Karlie to the public and to not even allow him to hear it. Now, I can understand them not wanting the world to hear Karlie in such a vulnerable experience, but Dr. Phil said that by listening to how she sounded, what kind of things she was saying, and even her tone could help him and other professionals try to decipher what kind of substance Karlie could have taken. It could have been helpful. Now, at that point, even though none of the other kids got sick, it was still the general consensus that Karlie could have been drugged or that the weed could have been laced with something. So finally, they did agree to allow Dr. Phil to listen to the audio. And in his opinion, she was hallucinating and having delusions, which would have not been caused by marijuana alone. He also said that Karlie hadn't actually begged for Melissa to call 911 like Lindsay said, but asked if something bad were to happen, would Melissa call 911?
Melissa, do you want to take a shower? Think it'll make you feel better? No?
You're gonna kill me.
Karlie, listen to what you just said to me.
What?
You said you're going to kill me.
Don't kill me.
Why would I kill you? That's preposterous. It's ridiculous.
I'm eating the devil's lettuce.
You're eating lettuce that I just freshly chopped that I bought from the grocery store.
I don't know why. I'm just
Why you would think it's the devil's lettuce?
Because I'm just thinking all these demonic stuff and I can't help it.
You're okay.
You wouldn't call them?
Why are you looking at me like that?
When you just said you wouldn't, would you call them?
911? If for what reason? If there was an emergency? If there was an emergency, yes, I would always call 911. Yeah.
Why are you scaring me?
I don't know. Just don't look at my face.
I have to look at you.
No, you don't. Is it because I'm ugly?
No, you're not.
You're beautiful.
You're ugly.
Since Lindsay had been so sure and adamant that Karlie begged for Melissa to call 911, this caused a lot of people to start questioning her credibility about some other things that she had claimed. In other interviews later down the road, Lindsay took her accusations a step further and said that it's possible that when Karlie got home, maybe since Zach had been drinking, he struck Karlie for lying to him about the football game, or because he didn't know how to deal with her acting so erratically. According to her, he had a history of hitting their son Kane in the past, if you remember. And if he felt like Karlie was going down a similar path, he could have wanted to put a stop to it by teaching her a lesson. People who are intoxicated have been known to go too far, hit too hard, and lose control. And she pointed that out as a possibility.
In high school, my son Kane would call us and he would be like, Mom, Dad just hit me over the head. And immediately he's like, but don't call him because I don't want to get in trouble. So what am I to do in this situation?
He beat his kid, so there's a good chance that he could have become.
I have a feeling he did. I think he did. I do. I truly do.
And got upset.
Yeah.
Because she was freaking out.
Yeah. Or because, Melissa told him that she lied about going to a football game. That's all bullshit. I'm sorry.
Now, while most people close to the case thought that that was an absolute outlandish, impossible scenario and a complete reach, some started to feel a little different when Zach was arrested in February of 2021. He was arrested for one felony count of inflicting corporal injury on a spouse.
Could respond to Highway 6. It's going to be south of White Mountain Estates Road. It's going to be a white Toyota Camry, 3 occupants. Mother has a possible broken shoulder.
Some have said that this could be a clear indication of violent tendencies, and that maybe Lindsay was in fact onto something. So after the official search had ended, an equestrian search team volunteered to take the horses back out to conduct another search in the desert. Before they left, Melissa asked everyone to make sure that they looked out for that piece of paper that Karlie was reported to have had with her when she left. When Lindsay first heard that Karlie had been carrying a piece of paper, she asked Melissa if she thought that it could potentially be a goodbye letter, a note indicating that she was planning to take her own life, and that maybe she had planned to walk out into the desert to complete that mission, to take her own life. But Melissa said that she was pretty sure that the paper she had was a form that she had to fill out for her counselor. She said that Karlie had been really adamant about getting it turned into school, But again, it was Saturday, so it doesn't really make any sense for her to have brought it with her that morning. Maybe if she was hallucinating and thinking it was a school day and she was going to be late to school and had to get out there on her own, possibly. Now, neither Melissa or Zach thought that Karlie was depressed, but some of her friends had a different perspective about her mental state leading up to her disappearance. A few of her closest girlfriends told investigators that since Karlie and Donald had started dating, she started smoking way more frequently and did seem to be showing some signs of depression. They attributed this mostly to the smoking of marijuana and not really on Donald himself. And they said that they had noticed some signs of paranoia as well, with Karlie thinking that people were tracking her. Even though Karlie didn't see her mom all the time, they did still talk frequently on the phone. And according to Lindsay, she had been seeming a little depressed ever since they made that move out of Chalfont. She said Karlie would tell her that she didn't like living out in the middle of nowhere, that she was bored all the time, and that all of her friends were in Bishop and they were hanging out without her. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that she had full-blown clinical depression. But when investigators searched through her internet history, they did find that Karlie had Googled a hotline for taking your own life, and she had Googled this a few weeks before she went missing. Lindsay also said in an interview that Karlie had told her that her dad, Zach, had been put on antidepressants because he told the kids that he couldn't do life anymore. There were also clear substance abuse issues in the family as well. Not only that, but 1 month after Zach was arrested for his domestic dispute charge, Karlie's older brother Kane was arrested on March 4th, 2021. He was arrested for felony assault with a firearm after he pointed a gun at the other residents of his home and then at himself. You would hope that he could have gotten the help that he needed after that. But 2 months later, in May of 2021, the police were called to Melissa and Zach's house for another domestic dispute. This time, Kane and his girlfriend came over to his parents' house, and there ended up being a disagreement that led to Kane stabbing himself and then holding a knife to his throat, again threatening to take his own life. Melissa reportedly took Kane's girlfriend home since the situation was getting dangerous, and then a physical altercation ensued as Zach tried to stop Kane from hurting himself.
Gusé versus Zachary, he stated that the son, 22-year-old Kane Gusé, got into a physical altercation with him. He stabbed himself and is possibly bleeding. He then stated that he's holding a knife against his throat and he will kill himself if the PD units or SO units show up. The wife currently drove the son, Kane Gusé's girlfriend, to her house and is not at the residence.
Model 110-2 just confirming Zach Gusé is at the house by himself with a knife to his throat.
Sam 2 negative. Zach Gusé was trying to stop his son Kane Gusé from killing himself. Zach Gusé is currently at the residence, and Kane Gusé has now left the residence. According to Zach Gusé, Kane was the aggressor in the situation.
So you can see that the years after Karlie's disappearance were not easy, and Kane even posted on Facebook, "The last thing I said to her was after she asked if she could come hang out at mine and my girlfriend's house. I was on my way to get my wisdom teeth pulled and I didn't want to have anyone over. It's the biggest regret of my life." He obviously is going through a lot, and it's probably extremely confusing when someone you love is gone, but you don't know if they're dead or alive, so you can't even properly grieve or move on at that point. However, of course, there are some people who have taken these domestic situations and believe that they are the result of Zach and Kane not being able to live with the guilt of what they know and what they know happened to Karlie. So before I get into the current updates about the case, I wanted to make sure that I at least touched on some of the other discrepancies that Lindsay, various private investigators, and Karlie support pages have raised questions about in the past. So in the camp of people who absolutely believe that Zach and Melissa had something to do with what happened to Karlie, it's not so much any one single inconsistency, but the accumulation of different versions of the story, and not being able to keep the details straight between each other. One example of this would be during the time that Melissa realized that Karlie was no longer in her bed. Lindsay and some publications have stated that Melissa went outside to look for Karlie before she woke up Zach, and that there were even the two witnesses who claimed to have seen her out before 7:30. If that were the case, it would lend credibility to the theory of the witnesses possibly confusing Karlie with Melissa. There are even some sources who say that Zach's phone record shows him to have called Melissa at 7:30 to ask her where she and Karlie were, and that's when he first found out that Karlie was missing and Melissa was out looking for her. A week after her disappearance, the sheriff's office set up a checkpoint along Highway 6 so that they could ask people driving through if they had possibly seen anything out of the ordinary that morning. They were able to talk to about 50 people who claimed to have driven near where Karlie was last seen, and even further up the highway, but none remembered seeing anyone matching her description. Some people have also posed questions about the physical probability of the witness's timeline. Even though it's changed by a few minutes here and there, the general timeline is that Melissa last saw Karlie before falling back asleep at 5:45. Sometime after that, Karlie left the house and was spotted by the neighbor in the hot tub at 6:30. She was then seen by the second neighbor between 7 and 7:15, and then again at the corner near Highway 6 at 7:30. So this had some people wondering what Karlie was doing between the first sighting at 6:30 and the second 7 to 7:15 sighting, because that would have been 30 to 45 minutes of her just walking down one single street for a distance of less than a quarter mile. From there, it would have taken her between 15 to 30 minutes to walk the rest of the way to the corner of Highway 60, which, from the second sighting, is a little over 3/4 of a mile. There she was spotted by the woodworker at 7:30. Back at home, Melissa said that she woke up between 7:15 and 7:30, and that's when she realized that Karlie was gone. She reportedly looked around the house for only a few minutes before going to wake up Zach, and they immediately got in their cars to go and look for her. So if they left the house at around 7:20, the drive to the end of the road near Highway 6, where Karlie was last seen, is only a 2-minute drive from their house. Now, I'm assuming one of them decided to drive around the neighborhood, and then maybe the other went on the road to check out the bus stop and near the highway. But if one left the neighborhood immediately, they should have gotten to the corner of Route 6 at around 7:23 a.m., which is 7 minutes before Karlie was spotted by the woodworker. If they didn't leave the house until 7:35 or so, that would have put them at the corner at around 7:38, leaving only an 8-minute time window for Karlie to have gotten abducted or willingly get into a car after the 7:30 sighting. Now, I hope that makes sense, and obviously people's recollection of times are probably off by a few minutes, give or take. But even Melissa has looked at this timeline herself and said that she probably missed Karlie at the corner by just minutes if she did in fact get in someone's car. While that's not a completely impossible timeline, it does make you wonder what Karlie was doing between 6:30 and 7 to 7:15, because if she were supposedly running away, you'd think that she would have been moving a little bit quicker. So I think one of the main controversies about this case has to do with Melissa and Zach choosing not to take Karlie to the hospital when something was very clearly wrong with her. When Karlie first went missing, Melissa reported that as soon as she found her running on Dixon Road, her eyes were dilated and she looked pale, and something was obviously seriously wrong with her and she was seriously afraid of something. Lindsay said that Melissa told her that on the way home, Karlie was panicking so much that she actually ended up grabbing the steering wheel, causing them to veer off the road a little bit.
This is exactly what Melissa told me right out of her mouth. Now, that's the first story. And so in the process of them making it home, she said Karlie reached in the front seat and grabbed the steering wheel and they veered off the highway. And I said, Melissa, did she hit her head on the dash? Because if you guys veered off the highway and she hit her head on the dash or on the windshield, she could have had a concussion. Of course she was confused.
Right.
So she's like, no, she didn't hit her head on anything. But it was a real nervous no.
Right.
Since Karlie was obviously not wearing her seatbelt while she hopped around in the back seat, Lindsay wondered if Karlie could have hit her head in the car and gotten a concussion. All that is to say that by the time Karlie had gotten in the car, Melissa would have known that she had something else going on besides just smoking marijuana. When they got home, both Zach and Melissa asked Karlie if she had taken anything else and asked Donald about the weed possibly being laced. They both have stated that to them it seemed like she was on meth, or maybe even LSD, and having some sort of bad trip. So all of this would contradict Melissa saying that taking Karlie to the hospital never even crossed her mind because it was just weed.
Being a mother, I wasn't going to take her to the hospital. She's high on marijuana. Why would I It didn't cross my mind. She was fine.
I mentioned earlier that during the initial search, the police questioned Donald and his friend James about if the marijuana was laced or if they had taken any other substances. Typically, when there is a child potentially in danger and the police know that there was possible underage drinking or substance abuse, in order to get the most accurate information and make the kids feel comfortable enough to be honest, they'll usually explain that they aren't looking to press any charges, that they aren't going to get in trouble. They just need as much information as possible for their investigation, especially when a child's life is at stake. We saw a similar situation when Kiely Rodni went missing from a party, coincidentally also in California. In order to get accurate information quickly, they assured all of the kids who attended the party that they wouldn't be pursuing any charges for drinking or drug use that may or may not have taken place.
When we spoke to a large group of the kids here at the community center, we made it clear we are not investigating their conduct that night. Okay, if you want to report anonymously, if you heard information from a friend and that friend doesn't want to come forward, please come forward on behalf of your friend and tell us that information. So we are not investigating you, we are partnering with you to receive any information to help find Kiely.
However, according to Lindsay, the investigators on Karlie's case took a different approach. She said that they threatened the kids at the party with charges if they didn't hand over the bong that was used, which caused James to give it to them and let them look around without a warrant.
They were threatening the kids at the party that if they didn't go in and get the bong, if something that Karlie had smoked was laced or anything like that, or if they found Karlie dead, that they would be held responsible for it. So rather than doing a proper agency search warrant, they threatened the kids and made them go in and get the bong that Karlie smoked out of and bring it out to them. Wow. So during that time, those kids could have done anything with it.
Right.
They weren't with them because they didn't have the proper warrant.
Now to Karlie.
So they're threatening them.
Plus, a year later, after James had turned 18, he was arrested for providing marijuana to a minor, but later pleaded guilty to contributing to the delinquency of a minor in relation to Karlie's disappearance. So far, that has been the only person publicly confirmed to have been arrested with anything in connection to Karlie. While it was Lindsay and many other people's opinion that Karlie overdosed on something, others pointed out that if she were to OD, it would have probably been closer to the time that she was with her friends, not hours later. As of 2023, it's also been confirmed that after testing items seized from that party house, there was no detection of any other substance other than marijuana. Over the last 5 years, since Karlie Gusé went missing, there have been several tips of possible sightings. On TikTok and in some Facebook groups, a rumor started going around that perhaps the mysterious mukbang YouTuber Kate Yup was actually Karlie. There has been speculation and chatter for years about Kate Yup actually being a person held against her will, who conveys these subliminal messages in her videos to ask her viewers for help. However, even though Kate only shows half of her face on camera, I still don't see a resemblance between her and Karlie. There's been other potential lookalikes across social media, but all were vetted by investigators to not be her. Now, one of the most promising tips actually came from a well-known YouTuber called Joey Mack, and his video about Karlie has 23 million views. While riding dirt bikes in Batista Canyon, which is about 5 hours away from Chalfont, Joey and his friend had a very eerie encounter with a girl who was barefoot and holding something wrapped up in her arms pretty much out in the middle of nowhere. The girl actually started running toward them, so they took off because there was supposedly a prison or a jail nearby, and they thought that she could have been an escaped inmate. However, Joey ended up talking to his girlfriend about what happened, and she decided to look up to see if there were any missing girls in the area, because according to Joey, she was dressed too nicely to be a bum, and she obviously wasn't a hiker or anything like that. So when they got back from dirt biking, his girlfriend showed him a picture of Karlie's missing flyer, and they honestly thought that the girl they saw looked just like her. They ended up calling to report the sighting to the police, and the first call that he made was to the Mono County Sheriff's Office, which is listed on Karlie's flyers. But the disturbing thing is, Joey said that they acted like they didn't even really care about the tip, and pretty much just brushed it off. So he decided to go ahead and call the sheriff's office of the county that they were in, and they were actually much more helpful, and they actually came out to the area that night to look for the teen. Sadly, the sighting wasn't of Karlie, but another teenage girl who had run away with her boyfriend. While some people have said that Joey's video brought a lot of attention to Karlie's case, Others have pointed out that his title saying "Found Missing Teen in the Mountains" and having a photo of Karlie in the thumbnail might cause people to see that and think that Karlie has actually been found. And in fact, while researching this case, I even saw several comments of people saying things like, "I heard she was found by a YouTuber on a dirt bike." So even though that could possibly be an issue, Joey's video did also highlight a pretty concerning situation of the Mono Sheriff's Office not taking tips seriously. This video was 4 years ago too, pretty close to when Karlie first went missing. If they were willing to blow off a tip of a girl who looks like Karlie, clearly out of a place in the wilderness only 4 hours away from home, it makes you wonder what other tips maybe they've gotten but haven't looked into. So if the marijuana that Karlie smoked was not laced, and if she had signs of possible depression and paranoia even before her disappearance, what could have made her so afraid that night that she ran away from her home, never to be seen again? The theory that I find most plausible is that Karlie was experiencing psychosis induced by marijuana. It's been proven that heavy or prolonged marijuana use, especially in individuals under 25 years old whose brains are still developing, may increase the risk for psychosis and hallucinations. It's believed that THC can disrupt the balance of neurotransmitters in the brain, particularly dopamine, which helps in regulating mood and perception. When dopamine in the brain is unbalanced, it can put people, especially under age 25, at a greater risk of psychosis. Now, when this happens, the person loses touch with reality and experiences delusions and even hallucinations. Marijuana use during adolescence can also interfere with normal brain development, especially in regions that deal with emotional regulation and decision-making. Now, while this doesn't happen to everyone and is considered relatively rare, it can contribute to the development of psychiatric disorders, including psychosis. There's also research that suggests that people who start using marijuana at an early age and who use it frequently or have a family history of psychiatric disorders are at a higher risk. Even though Karlie supposedly hadn't smoked for a month prior to that night, it's been said that marijuana-induced psychosis can still occur even after someone quits. Some people have reported lingering symptoms, and others have even developed a long-lasting psychotic disorder. We know that Karlie's family has a family history of substance abuse and mental health issues, and the people closest to her have stated that when she started dating Donald, she was smoking much more frequently, even at school. So maybe if she went from smoking every day to quitting then to smoking again at this party, it led to some sort of psychotic episode, which would have explained her confusion, her fear, her paranoia, delusions, and all of the irrational thinking. It would also explain why it didn't just wear off after a few hours of rest. She had already run away from Donald that night, who was someone that she usually felt safe with. So I do think that this is the most plausible explanation as to what could have happened and why she ran away from her home where she was safe. But I'm curious to know, what do you think? Even if we can get a general idea of what was going on and why in her mind it would have seemed logical to leave, that still doesn't tell us what happened after she walked out that door. There is still the possibility of Karlie wandering off into the desert and either succumbing to the elements or animals or getting picked up on the side of the road by someone with bad intentions. California consistently has the highest number of trafficking cases in the United States, with over 1,600 cases reported in 2018. So, could Karlie have been the 1,657th case? Even though that scenario would be absolutely horrible, it could at least mean that she is still alive and might be rescued someday.
Karlie, I love you so much with all of my heart. Please come home. Please come home to where you are not only loved by me and your family and friends, but by an entire community that wants to see you come home safely. Dear Lord, please, please bring Karlie home. To all of us. And if someone has you, get away. Be strong and get away. And I want to say to that person, let her go so she can come back home to where she's very much loved. Find it in your heart to let her go.
So even though that is definitely a possibility, the last thing I wanted to go over are two of the most current leads on this case, and either which could lead to the truth of what happened to Karlie Gusé. A man named Paul Dostai is a retired Mammoth Lakes Police Department sergeant and detective. He believes that he knows exactly what happened to Karlie and can prove it utilizing coyote feces, excrement, or whatever else you want to call it, the things that come out of a coyote. So after retirement, he focused on training human remain detection dogs capable of detecting decomposition, blood, and DNA at an extremely low and even microscopic level. For years, he and his specially trained dogs assisted in nonprofits that conducted searches and rescue missions for missing U.S. military personnel. Now, he and his dogs had such a high success rate that he was even called in to assist in high-profile unsolved missing persons cases. During these searches, he often teamed up with a friend named Arpad Vass, who is a biochemist and forensic anthropologist. Vass is the inventor of a device called the quantum oscillator, and according to Dostai and Voss, the device can isolate any object or material's natural vibrational frequency. This frequency is then directed out in a particular environment through an antenna, and it searches for objects in the area with the same frequency. When it encounters an object with the same frequency, that frequency is then emitted back to a receiving antenna. So for example, I know that's a lot of information, and it's like if you're not a science brain, it's hard to follow. It definitely was hard for me to follow at first. So for example, if I have the device isolate the frequency of a pen, I could then direct that frequency out into a field, and I would receive frequencies back if there were any other pens in the area. The data from the quantum oscillator can be processed and analyzed to generate a visual representation, like a heat map or a 3D model that shows the object's location. So according to Vass, since the device uses natural frequencies, it can be utilized to locate not just objects, but also missing people, both alive and dead. To accomplish this, he uses familial keratin DNA. Dostai and Vass work together by using this quantum oscillator to determine whether or not a person's frequency is in the area, and then Dostai's highly trained dogs sniff to locate that person, the decomposition, and even tiny amounts of their blood or DNA. So during the investigation of Karlie's disappearance, Vass and Dostai were given 3 of Karlie's baby teeth to put through the device. The data directed them from Karlie's street and past the neighbor's house of the first and second sighting. They were led across the highway through some bushes and located a trail of blood only a half a mile away from where Karlie was seen by the woodworker. The data showed areas as far as 3 miles away with the same frequency, and Dostai's dogs were consistently alerting for the presence of human remains or DNA. Using the data they received from the quantum oscillator, they continued searching for over a week. When 3 miles away from the initial blood trail, they made a pretty unexpected discovery. On a bush, Dostai found a pair of women's underwear with animal bites taken out of it. He brought his dogs over to the bush, and they got closer, and they started alerting like crazy, indicating a heavy presence of human decomposition. Dostai said that he then began looking for animal feces in the vicinity of the bush and ended up finding a few different piles of them. The dogs sniffed the first pile. They didn't make any alerts, but then they sniffed the second one, and they made alerts immediately. The feces had what appeared to be bone fragments, and at that point, Dostai and Vass were confident that they knew exactly what happened to Karlie. They had used this method before to locate animal feces that ultimately had bone fragments of a missing person that they had been looking for. Their findings have even been used in court to prove that a person was no longer alive. I think that the dogs alone alerting to human decomposition around the bush where chewed underwear were located and bone fragments in what turned out to be coyote feces is pretty impressive, especially since this was found within 3 months of Karlie going missing. Dostai's dogs alerted to 40% of all of the animal feces within a 3-mile radius, indicating that one coyote or several other animals had ingested some sort of form of human remains. However, as promising as all of this sounded, the Mono County Sheriff's Office came and took some of the samples, and they announced that the evidence was not related to Karlie. Now, I'm not really sure how they were able to determine that so quickly because Dostai sent an anthropologist samples of the soil underneath where the underwear had been found, and not even she was able to extract any discernible DNA. There is also a forensics lab that is conducting research on DNA extraction from bones to identify potential murder victims, and if they are successful, Dostai plans to raise money to get the DNA extracted from the fragments in the coyote feces. So since DNA extraction from bone is not exactly a readily available service unless you have a lot of money, and since no DNA was found in the soil alone, it doesn't really make sense for the police department to just completely disregard what Dostai and Vass found. Maybe they were able to get some definitive DNA off the underwear that were found, or maybe Melissa flat out said those weren't Karlie's underwear, but I think if that were the case, they would have just said that. They would have just told Dostai that information, and he wouldn't still be attempting to extract DNA from those bone fragments. Anyway, what do you think about this lead? I can kind of see a law enforcement agency not really understanding the whole concept of quantum oscillators because it is a little confusing and might seem to them like pseudoscience, but at the same time, the Mono Sheriff's Office has a tendency of brushing off leads, if you remember. Regardless if this evidence will be able to be connected to Karlie or not, I think that their whole process and the device could be beneficial for the future of search, rescue, and recovery missions, and hopefully can help bring closure to other families in the future. Now, many people think that this last tip that I'm going to talk about could actually be the big break in the case that law enforcement has been waiting for. This past August, People Magazine Investigates put out an episode about the Karlie Gusé case, and at the end of the show, investigators released new information about a surprising tip that they had received in 2021. The caller was an ex-drug addict looking to make amends, which is typically a requirement, as many of us know, in the 12-step program. He said he had been living with guilt of knowing what happened to Karlie. Now, according to the tipster, he actually saw Karlie at a party in Tonopah, Arizona, which is 2 hours away from Chalfont and one of the first cities that you'll arrive at when driving on Highway 6. He said that at the party there was an incident involving Karlie, and he said that he felt bad about this incident and about knowing about it and wanted to get it off his chest. Even though it was never stated what the incident was, they did say that he provided the make, model, and location of the car that supposedly brought Karlie to that area. The car was seized and brought in as evidence for analysis, and several items were sent to the lab for DNA testing. As of late 2023, they are apparently still waiting on those results. Even though this was supposedly the first time any information about that tip has been publicly released, I actually do remember hearing Lindsay explain something similar in an interview that she gave about a year ago. I'm not 100% sure that the tip Lindsay is referring to is the same one that the investigators talked about on the show, but to me they sound very similar, so I'll let you be the judge. But if they are the same, then we might actually know what happened to Karlie.
We did have tips, possible tips, I should say, of somebody stating that Karlie got hit by a car and was thrown out of a car, or was thrown out of a car and struck by another vehicle. And they went to the state. They found the people they were looking for, the person of interest that they got the tip from, or about, I should say. And they began interrogating them and asking about this vehicle. They said they didn't have the vehicle. Well, they ended up finding a vehicle that matched the description with damage to the front end. So they thought they were onto something. Now, this is all news to you guys. This has not been publicized. And I haven't heard back from the sheriff in probably 7 or 8 months over this. And so they went and they issued a possible kidnapping and a possible homicide warrant for these individuals that may have hurt Karlie.
So that seems to be where we are at with this case, but I really want to know what you think. The wicked stepmother angle is literally a tale as old as time, and even though there are inconsistencies in the details that Melissa gave in the beginning, I think much of that can be explained by new information coming in quickly and her being incredibly stressed out. I can completely understand Lindsay's point of view as well, but I think that most likely Karlie was having a mental health crisis and then was either attacked by an animal in the desert or was maybe picked up by someone who wouldn't let her leave. Maybe the tip from that other city and that party is correct. Or maybe she's alive somewhere. Some people have even considered that the piece of paper she was carrying was a list of phone numbers or addresses so that she could leave her phone behind while willingly running away. But just based on what everyone has said about Karlie, I can't see her doing that. And her parents have said that she has thousands of dollars that have been untouched in her bank account. Which, surely if she ran away, she'd take at least a little money with her, right? I'm sure everyone can agree that Melissa and Zach should have taken Karlie to the hospital that night. And they've said that they wish that they did. Regardless, I hope that Lindsay, Zach, Melissa, and the rest of their family and friends get some answers soon so that they aren't living just in this constant state of unknowing and unrest. As for Zach, he is reportedly 2 years sober after his arrest in 2021. And Karlie's brother Kane seems to be doing really well with his girlfriend too, and with a baby on the way. For years, Donald made heart-wrenching Facebook posts, and it seemed like he was really struggling and maybe felt like without knowing what had happened to Karlie, he could never move forward or love again. But as of 2023, it does seem like he's been able to find some happiness, even though it's obvious that he will always love Karlie as well. So please let me know what you think happened in this case, and if anyone does have any information on the whereabouts or what happened to Karlie Gusé, please come forward. The more you share this video too, the more likely somebody is to see it and maybe spark a memory, a sighting, or something. Because if that new tip is true, other people would have had to have seen her. But if something else happened, there is someone somewhere who knows and could help. You can call the Mono County Sheriff's tip line at 760-932-5678 or email karliegusetips@monosheriff.org. You can also contact the Sacramento FBI office at 916-746-7000 or submit an anonymous tip on fbi.gov/tips.
If Karlie is watching this tonight, what do you want to say to her?
Baby girl, there's nothing that you can't say to me or call out to me. Just, please, Karlie. I missed you. I love you. And just keep praying, baby. You're gonna come home.
Karlie, I love you so much with all of my heart. Please come home. Please come home to where you are not only loved by me and your family and friends, but by an entire community that wants to see you come home safely. Dear Lord, please, please bring Karlie home. To all of us. And if someone has you, get away. Be strong and get away. And I want to say to that person, let her go so she can come back home to where she's very much loved. Find it in your heart to let her go.
Thank you guys so much for tuning into today's case and hearing Karlie's story. If you enjoyed this coverage and you want to hear more true crime stories, hit the subscribe button below and make sure all notifications are turned on so that you don't miss a new episode. Thanks again, guys, and until the next case, stay safe.